Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to another episode of the Think Clinical Podcast. My name is Hamza. Thank you so much. If you haven't done so already, please remember to subscribe, like, and share. This is going to be another exciting episode, I promise. And we are going to be looking at a very important topic here. And the commonest thing we usually hear people say is that healthcare is not a normal business. And that's why most entrepreneurs fail in it, and we have to be able to understand why most of the time people say that. And it's not because we are trying to discredit the business acumen or the business knowledge of other people, but it's because there are a lot of different dynamics in play in healthcare. So please stay tuned, and if you haven't done so already, please remember to subscribe, like, and share, because it's going to be another exciting episode. Now, the most common thing that people will look at is when they think about healthcare business, like how hard could this be, right? And then the answer I always give people is that it's harder than you think. And most of the time, the consequences of your decisions are more expensive than you can even imagine. So it's important that we look at these things in the whole context, and trying to understand exactly why these conversations and these statements keep coming up, so that we can appreciate some of the dynamics that we need to adapt to when we are going to healthcare businesses. So let me start with the story of what happened 1,000 times. A successful healthcare entrepreneur from tech or retail looks at healthcare and sees inefficiencies everywhere. They see long wait times. They see clunky systems. They see frustrated customers. Patients. And they think, I built a successful business in the food industry or in the transportation industry. I can fix this, because they've identified the problem. 18 months later, they're out of business. Here's the data. Insights, when there are 260 healthcare startups who failed were analyzed, the most common reason cited by founders was that we did not understand the market dynamics in healthcare. Out of 260 companies that were studied. Now, when you treat healthcare like a normal business, it ends up destroying you regardless of how experienced you are in business. So let me give you the numbers and why this happens. According to research from McKinsey, the average gross margin in healthcare businesses ranges from 35% to 50%. That sounds healthy, correct? Now, if you compare that to a SaaS business where margins are often exceed 80%, or e-commerce where successful companies hit 40 to 50% and can scale rapidly with that digital infrastructure, then you start asking yourself what is happening. And that's where the illusion of trying to improve and these margins come in. But here's the catch. Healthcare margins come with operational complexity that multiplies costs in ways that other industries never ever face. And if you are going to healthcare business and you don't understand this reality, it's going to be a problem. Now, here's the hidden costs. When you look at regulatory compliance alone, averagely the annual cost for small businesses is about $150,000 to $300,000, and this is according to a survey by Medical Economics. When you look at malpractice insurance alone, the cost can range from $50,000 to about $200,000 annually per physician. When you look at credentialing and payer contracting, it takes 90 to 120 days per payer with no revenue during that period. And if you look at clinical staffing, it can't be offshored. It can't be automated easily or replaced with contractors. It's so hard. So these are costs that people never pay attention to and are not used to in other industries, but when they come in, it becomes a problem. So your tech startup competitor pays for AWS engineers, you pay for compliance officers, you pay malpractice insurance, and you pay credentialing specialists before you see a single dollar of revenue that comes into you. So what are we trying to say here? Why does the standard of business models break when you start veering to healthcare? Let's talk about the 3 business model assumptions that destroy healthcare entrepreneurs. Assumption number 1: we will scale fast and achieve unit economics at volume. It works in tech. You build once, you sell infinitely. Each additional user has near zero marginal cost, right? But in healthcare, each additional patient requires clinical time, which doesn't scale, individualized treatment, which can be automated, and liability, which increases with volume, right? So here we go again. And a study from the American Medical Association found that an average primary care physician can safely manage a panel of 1,500 to 2,000 patients. There's no way you can 10x this with a better software. Clinical care has built-in scaling limits, and no matter what you do, you will hit those scaling limits, and you have to understand that, and you have to accept that. The assumption number 2 that people make is that we control our pricing. In most businesses, you set pricing based on cost plus desired margin, correct? And it's that simple. In healthcare, payers would control your pricing. So you might work so many years, and your payers will probably never review what they pay you, even though the price of payroll, the price of supplies, and the price of everything is going up. So according to Kaiser Family Foundation, 92% of non-elderly Americans with insurance are covered by plans where reimbursement rates are set by insurers, not providers. So you don't set prices, you accept them, or you're out of network. So and here's the worst thing. Research from Fair Health shows that in-network reimbursement rates can vary from 500% for the same service in the same geographic area, depending on your negotiating power. So when you are starting out, you have zero negotiating power. Assumption number 3, more customers equals more revenue. Again, in healthcare, more patients can mean less profit because of payer mix. So if you have a heavy load of Medicaid patients, yes, you may see a lot of patients, but the payment and the reimbursements that are coming to you are way minimal. So a study published by Health Affairs found that Medicaid reimburses roughly 72% of the cost of care for primary health providers, and Medicare reimburses 86% of the cost. So if your patient volume grows but it's primarily Medicaid patients, you are scaling toward bankruptcy because you're not getting reimbursed for the whole cost of what you're putting into it. So in a normal business, customers are customers. In healthcare, customer profitability varies by 50 to 100% based entirely on their insurance, which you don't control. We just went through 3 assumptions that are completely false, and you have to be able to look at that. So the regulatory friction, the other thing that we have to talk about today is the regulatory friction no one warns you about. And I'll just briefly walk you through some of these things that most healthcare entrepreneurs don't know. 1, you have to be HIPAA compliant if you're going to be operating the healthcare space. But the average cost to implement is about 150 to 500,000 for small organizations, and the average penalty for violation is 100 to 50,000 per record breached. And then the time to implement is probably around 6 to 12 months. This is 1. The Stark Law and Anti-Kickback Statutes, and these are federal laws that prohibit financial relations between physicians and their entities, right? So it sounds simple, but they don't just pay, just don't pay for referrals. That's all they're saying. But here's the reality. These laws are so complex that health organizations spend millions on legal counsel just to structure partnerships that might be compliant. So a normal business pays for a customer acquisition. In healthcare, paying for patient acquisition can be a federal crime. The third thing, and the third regulatory friction that you need to look at is state licensing requirements. You want to expand your telehealth service to all 50 states. You need 50 separate medical licenses for each provider with 50 different credentialing processes, continuing education requirements, and renewal cycles. That is the reality. And the cost per state license is anything between $500 to $5,000, and time to obtain would usually range from 60 to 120 days. Scale doesn't make this easier, it makes it more expensive. That's another thing you need to look at. So again, I always end with what actually works. So if healthcare isn't a normal business, how do you build success? Strategy number 1, design for reinvestment environment, not against it. So don't fight the payer system. You need to architect your business model around that. So when we look at Oak Street Health, for instance, they built a primary care model specially designed for Medicare Advantage plans. They didn't try to change the reimbursement system. They built a business that thrives within it. So the result is they went IPO in 2020 at 4.8 billion valuation. Strategy number 2, build regulatory compliance into your DNA, not your backlog. And healthcare winners don't bolt on compliance, they design it from day one. This means hiring compliance expertise before you hire growth marketers. It means budgeting for regulatory cost before expansion cost. And strategy number 3, optimize for outcomes, not volume. You need to do value-based care and restructuring healthcare economics. According to Healthcare Payment Learning and Action Network, 40% of healthcare payments are now tied to value-based arrangements. This means profit comes from improving outcomes, not seeing more patients. Here's the truth: healthcare punishes normal business thinking. And if you are willing to learn these rules, to embrace regulation as infrastructure, to design around reimbursement realities, and to measure success in clinical outcomes, you can really build something extraordinary. So we keep saying healthcare isn't a normal business. That's not a weakness, it's a moat. This has been another episode of the Think Clinical podcast. Thank you so much, everyone. Please remember to subscribe, like, and share, and we'll see you in our next episode.